Hi, and welcome back to Unplanned, the show about cities and how they work. I'm Sam, your host, and today we're going to meet, really, not for the first time, because we met a little while ago, but a fascinating person who is also a filmmaker, and we're fascinated by that, who is working on the subjects of decarbonization, starting with food networks in New York City. If any of that is incorrect, you will correct me. Welcome, Elayne Cronin, to Unplanned.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sam. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm thrilled. And we got the chance to meet through another Unplanned guest, Rachel Walters, who recommended you as a wonderful and fascinating person.
I'm a big fan of Rachel as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of hers. You're a filmmaker. I'm going to want to know a lot about that, but that's not what this show is about. This show is about cities and how they work. And you're doing a project, you're working on a project now related to cities and how they work. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the project you're working on, and then I want to hear the filmmaking part about the project you're working on. So what are you working on right now?
So I'm in the process of developing a documentary series called This Decarbonizing World with Elayne Cronin, which is me. But really, it's looking at this moment in time and exploring how we're sort of sorting out the way the future of our critical infrastructure is going to work in a clean energy economy. And by systems, what I'm talking about is things that support our everyday lives, like the things that you don't necessarily think about until something goes wrong. Food distribution, waste management, the grid, data. These are all critical systems. They support our everyday lives in visible and visible ways. And the documentary series that I'm developing is looking at food distribution and trucking in the Hunts Point area of the Bronx.
So tell us, I mean, there's so much in there, and it's so fascinating. But you're doing this, so you're in the title, so I assume you're leading your viewers through this adventure, through this story. How did you get to the story? How did you get to the topic area?
So we're here at the world-renowned Greentown Labs in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is North America's largest incubator for startups that are developing climate technologies. And I worked for a startup here that had a technology for the trucking industry. And I was leading their marketing, but sort of gradually evolved into a role where I was opening the New York City market. And so I had to go to New York on a monthly basis and basically try to meet as many people as I could for sales reasons, but also just trying to figure out the market. Like, who do I need to talk to? Who are the stakeholders? Who are the players? Who are the decision makers? Just straight up sales.
Right.
But while I was doing all this work, I was just, going into the guts of the New York City trucking system, which is, or the market rather, it's a market that feeds 21 million people on a daily basis, both in New York City, the boroughs, and in New Jersey and Connecticut, and then it's just this massive, massive infrastructure that they're at a moment in time where they're trying to figure out how to decarbonize it. What does that look like? And for me, it was...
Before you go too further on that, when you say they are trying to figure it out, who's the they in that?
That's a good question. So it's both a combination of people, like city officials, so city government, and also state government, of course, and then I would say the leadership of the industry itself, which again is a very hardcore market, very intense. Every single day they're getting food from point A to point B.
Yeah.
The intensity and the rigors of it are real, and but I found these people, the companies and the leadership in the companies, to be actually very thoughtful about how you actually practically decarbonize the industry.
Well, before we get to the decarbonizing, give us a flavor of how it actually works. Because if you stop for a second, you say 21 million people every single day. There's only so much road width, so many traffic lanes. How does it work? Like, what did you see? What did you see when you went there?
So it's a very it's a very working class, blue collar job system. First of all, so it's a massive economic engine. So it employs a lot of people. There's 10 to 15,000 trucks that circulate daily. Right. So from an environmental perspective, there's obviously a ton of air pollution and particulate matter that's being released into the air on a daily basis because of this economic activity. And so it starts extremely early in the morning. Right. There's these massive. If you
like what time? Like
I think it's open probably all the time. I could be wrong about that, but I think like 4:00 in the morning is when people get there and start.
Right. So they have to load all these trucks.
They have to load all these trucks, and it's just it's everything. It's meat, it's produce, it's fish. Budweiser is there. It's just this hub of. It's a hub, and then all the spokes are just, it's a blue-collar network that's basically a blue-collar jobs infrastructure that's, feeding and keeping New York City alive every single day.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just...
Right.
It was incredible.
Right.
Because I like to learn about how systems work. Right. And the people that I met in this industry were just fascinating characters. And New York is a very, here in Boston, it's a very intellectual culture. Right, New York is commerce-based.
Interesting.
And they loved, they were very receptive to what I was selling, wanted to learn about it. Yeah. And I just had some great conversations with people and learned a lot. So it just captivated my imagination. And that's when the filmmaking part of my brain started to speak to me. It was like, this would actually be a fascinating documentary series.
So help us with that. So you're working for this startup. That's why you're down in New York. You're going down every month. But eventually, it sounds like this is transformed into documentary. I don't know if you're still working for the startup or not, or how that's all played out. But how did that transition happen for you?
I tried to get away from filmmaking, which is...
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You did? Why? You just felt
I
think
I just needed a break. When I finished my PhD, I had made a film and I had my children, and I just felt like I just needed a long break from the documentary world. And so, but of course I still have a lot of friends that I came up with and, learned the trade with, so to speak. So again, the filmmaker brain didn't turn off when I was in these places and talking with people. I was like, if people that care about climate or infrastructure could see how compelling this industry leader talks about trucking and the challenges that the industry is facing, they might see the climate and the infrastructure in a new light. And so this is how my brain started working.
So you then set out to say, well, this would be a good story. Tell us where you're at right now in the storytelling part of your film, of your documentary, which sounds like it's going to be a series, right? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm launching it on YouTube.
Okay.
Which I'm very excited about. And so we shot the pilot actually in July of 2023. And I wanted to figure out what the best possible avenue was to distribute this, how I could engage the most people I wanted to, or identify the correct partners for this type of content. So basically trying to, from a business perspective and from a strategy perspective, figure out how this content can be used, cross-utilized, and not just making a passion project because I care about it.
Sure.
So it's taken a while to figure out how how I want to roll it out, but also develop my own point of view, my own voice.
Yeah.
So I've always been behind the camera.
Are you getting in front of the camera?
So yes, so I.
How does that make you feel? It's a little harder.
Yeah, it's a little harder.
I find it a little easier to be
Yeah.
behind the camera.
Yep, and but it's always humbling, of course, to be in front of the camera. It makes you realize
Right, yeah.
how hard it is. But so it's really kind of figuring out how I want this to look and the arc of it and the shape of it. So so we shot a series of interviews, and so we have a trailer that's out in the world right now, and then we have 5 episodes that we're currently editing that are featuring different interviews with people that I met there. So it's just taking you through a journey of different perspectives on this issue in New York City. I think the value that I'm bringing in this series is just asking the questions and taking the viewer through the journey of how the experts. I would not call myself an expert on decarbonizing trucking, but through the process of working in this industry, I learned about critical issues. So I would say that, first of all, it's a lot harder than we can possibly understand at this moment, only because our lives are set up in such a way that we're used to this. We're used to our grocery stores being always stocked with milk at a certain price. And when you start tinkering with the supply chain, where the cost of delivering the products or the technologies that you're using to deliver the products cost more, then the consumer is going to end up paying the difference for that.
Right.
So
that all gets pushed off on
right.
the
So it's
consumer.
like it's almost like a game of when you take out the sticks.
Yes.
and
yes.
the ball.
I know. Yes.
I forget what that's called, but so it's when you affect one thing, it affects everything else.
Right.
And I don't see our society being set up in such a way where we would actually tolerate a disruption to our normal way of living, which is fair. I mean, these systems are incredible. Like the fact that we can get whatever we want, at any time is, and the human and technological chain that happens every single day to make that happen is fascinating and amazing and worthy of admiration. So in terms of the technical fixes, what I became concerned about was the cities and the states all in focus on electric as being, or full electric trucks as being sort of the only incentivized solution right now that's being offered in the city.
Interesting.
I do, I say that, but I think there is actually some now programs that are being implemented for renewable diesel, which is great. But by and large, the electric truck technology has really captivated our public imagination, which has affected policymaking. But I wasn't totally sure that was the right path to decarbonize, 10 to 15,000 trucks in an area that like Hunts Point. I mean, there's major issues with the grid, ability to deliver electricity, charging, also to back up a little bit, like the life cycle analysis of electric trucks. So the state sort of refers to them as zero emission vehicles, but it's actually zero tailpipe emission vehicles.
Right.
Whereas it's not regulated on life cycle analysis, so you're simply displacing the carbon to another part of the supply chain. So that's an issue that needs to be considered from a policy perspective. And then, beyond that too is the supply chains and the critical minerals that we need for the batteries. It's just hard to understand whether these technologies are actually moving the needle on decarbonization. That to me was unclear.
Right.
And then, of course, on the other side is the public health aspects of decarbonizing transportation. the Bronx, and I interview a number of, or a couple community health activists. The Bronx is actually known as Asthma Alley. It
Right.
has the highest rates of asthma in the country, actually.
Oh, really?
And that's, and I want to be clear that that's not due only to trucking.
Right.
There's the whole 95, there's an entire, circulation, highway infrastructure where
Right.
trucks and vehicles, and also the tires, that the tires release a particulate matter that goes into the air, so that affects it as well.
Right.
But it's just a very dense,
Yeah.
populated area that's facing severe health consequences because of the air quality.
Right.
So, and I know that there's well-meaning and well-intentioned people that really want to address this, but it's difficult, and
Yeah.
that's the what I was trying to explore. So I'm not really offering answers in this series, but just trying to raise these bigger issues.
Right. Well, I will say for me, who is interested in cities and policy questions and the public health and all the environmental questions, honestly, I haven't spent any time thinking about how food gets to the end user. But as soon as you stop and you think about it, you think that is an amazing system, because we all eat, let's say, 3 times a day. And in New York City, that's millions of people. And it's just mind-boggling to even think about that.
No, it is. It's a scale that's unfathomable. And, I was trying to make it, I was, trying to fathom it a bit.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it is fascinating to think about. And in my mind, I picture those smaller trucks, the little delivery trucks that make those just stop after stop after stop all the way through the city, delivering whatever they're delivering. I mean, I've never really thought about it.
Right.
It's totally fascinating. So tell us about the movie. So where are you in the process? I want to give anybody who's going to watch this Unplanned a little teaser as to what they can look forward to when they start following you out there in the world.
So I'm releasing it in January 2025, which is crazy to say.
Which is coming up.
Right.
Very soon.
Yeah, it's like tomorrow. So, and it's a series of different interviews with, I would say, leading industry players. So I have Barry Malaya, who's the owner of Malaya Leasing and Rental, or it could be rental and leasing, I'm sorry. And he's had his business since the 80s. He's one of the largest leasing companies in New York City. The trucking industry is actually dominated by leasing companies.
Oh, interesting.
So he had a really amazing perspective on basically the business side of how trucking operates in that area, and then he as himself is very conscientious about the need to reduce emissions and pollution in the area, yet he understands that it has to make business sense and operation sense. Right. And so just kind of capturing that perspective, what I was trying to do. And then the next one is about from Juan Corsino, who's the director of fleet for Manhattan Beer, which is the largest beverage distributor in New York City. And he's demoing full electric Volvo trucks. So it's, I'm interviewing him about his experience with it, how he sees it fitting into his fleet operations, what are the challenges. I also interview a couple people that are working on a community health level about public health impacts of this infrastructure and their point of view on some of the things that the city is implementing, the challenges they're facing, the history of air quality issues in the area. So, and then lastly, I also interviewed a lawyer who represents fleets in idling fine cases. So New York City has implemented a bounty system for idling, which basically means that a citizen can record video of a truck that they suggest is idling, or I would say they'll film them idling, and then they submit that video to the city department, and if the fine is paid or if it's deemed, that they were idling, then that person gets a portion of the fine. So
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it's really created I would say a messy situation for both the city, the relationship between the city and the fleets. On small businesses, it's really had a huge impact on, and I don't think for the better. So it's really about if we're going to have this clean energy transition and a new economy, we really need a sound legal infrastructure to support that transition.
Right.
So it was just kind of hearing the other side of that perspective.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, and thank you for joining us on Unplanned, but what's your takeaway on the whole thing? I mean, you are still making the movie, you're still doing interviews, and you're still doing that. But given everything from your first moment where you said, oh, this might make a good story, what can you leave us with as a...
That's a great question. I think I'm still very much in the launch phase and sort of overcoming doubts about whether people really want to even hear these stories. Is what I'm doing actually going to make a meaningful difference? So I'm sort of still kind of overcoming all of the internal creative dynamics. But I think
Can I just interject briefly?
Yeah.
Don't do that to yourself. I'm sure the quality is, I hate to say this, is going to be a lot better than anything I would ever produce, and that alone is going to make it worth watching. I'm sure about that. 100% positive.
I think, telling stories around issues of climate have traditionally been sort of a doom and gloom narrative, and I think that's rightfully so, unfortunately. At the same time, I don't like to watch those types of movies because you feel so powerless, and I just don't know how much more we can get out of that approach. So what I really want to do is just make people really excited about how our world works, because and also really excited about how many people really are engaged and invested in changing it. And it's, again, we're talking about food distribution and 3 meals a day. And what I like to say is, even if you're the most ardent environmentalist and you're a vegan and you ride your bike everywhere, you still depend on a truck for your everyday life. Right. So you have to engage with these systems. It's a collective system.
Yeah.
And you can't just paint the goodies and the baddies and make it black or white. It's a system.
Right.
So I like to just tell those stories and get inside of it and just show hey, this is so fascinating, and this is this moment in human history where we're trying to figure this out. And I think it's a really amazing time to be doing that.
Yes. Well, I agree with you. I am going to agree with everything you just said. And I think the storytelling part, one of the things I've realized as I've done more video stuff, is just showing how something works is fascinating all by itself.
Right.
And it's the basis of how do we then change how it works.
Exactly. There you go.
Elayne Cronin, thank you for joining us on Unplanned. I have enjoyed hearing so much about your work, and I can't wait to see your product once it's out there. If people wanted to follow you or learn more about you, where could they? Is there any place they could go online to?
Yeah, YouTube. This Decarbonizing World with Elayne Cronin.
You heard it.
Elayne
here.
with a Y.
You heard it here first, folks, and we'll put it down below here.
Okay.
Thanks so much again.
All right. Thank you for having me, Sam.